Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fly's post-game presser for the game between the Pies and the Crows. It's time to talk all things black and white. All right, let's do this. Let's hear what Fly had to say after what was a pleasing performance. Careful with my words, how I choose to speak now, but pleasing to get a lot of our trends from the most part of the season, get those trends back in the right direction in a big way without getting the win, which is the negative in this all. So let's have a listen. At start, Fly was talking about how we had 39 forward 50 stoppages that game, and the only time I could really recall a score from stoppage were two opportunities from Nick Dacos. Just would have, yeah. I mean, like, not that Adelaide had many forward stoppage goals. Like, I think that one of their goals came from the ball falling short from a boundary throw in, and then DC sort of just socketed it off the ground, and then Peatling picked it up opportunistically and snapped it on his boot and put it through the two big sticks. So I would say it seemed like both teams clearly struggled in the forward 50 for their stoppage respectively. So it's hard, man. It's a hard game to be the judge of. Conditions were tough. Fly does mention the Collingwood's ability early in the game at first quarter to change angles and be a bit braver with the ball use. But if we want to play devil's advocate, that last quarter and moments in the game where Adelaide were willing to take a more difficult kick in the corridor or wherever it may be to try and open up the game. And it's funny because some of their kicks didn't work out, but because it created chaos, it got the ball moving, and Adelaide were first there, and then they would get a result inside 50 and kick a goal, which changes the way the game pans out. So, as I said in the post-game show, if there's a criticism, I think it's that. Just try and be a little bit braver earlier than your opposition at times. Like, just do it. We did that in the last 7 minutes. We went full rocker mode, and it was too little too late. Like, we had some really good moments. Nick Dacos kicks that goal. Jack Crisp from 50 meters out. Like, massive moments. But, yeah, just... Can we see that a little bit earlier? Fly was asked about the last 6 weeks and talked about how the conversation was inside the four walls, and Fly pragmatically goes through each of those games. Says, yeah, we'll look against Freo. We were up by 4 goals in the fourth quarter. Against Gold Coast, we kicked 10 points, and then all of a sudden we were in front in that last quarter. Didn't quite work out. Beat Richmond. Yes, unfortunately, Brisbane, we played for a half, and then Hawthorn was just that was a shocker, essentially. And then we come into this game, we play really well, so we are turning the corner. And while that's what Fly says, I concur. I can't disagree. We've turned a corner. We can still make top 4, and we have it in our hands to the as close to having the fate in our hands as possible. I think Gold Coast, if they absolutely pump Port and Essendon, I think we could fall out of the 4. But if we convincingly beat Melbourne, which is not a gimme, it's not going to be easy. We could hold top 4 in our hands, and then we just go from there. History says a team can't win a flag losing 5 of your last 6. But, I mean, we defied odds in 2023. Why can't we go the extra length now? The 3 games in 12 days has been a talking piece. And Fly admits, that's something they had to navigate around, and it's difficult, and you're not going to get the best. But at the end of the day, this is the fixtures. There's no point bitching and moaning about it. It is what it is. Similar to the umpires, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about those umpires specifically talking about the game against Adelaide, Riley Thilthorpe versus Dan McStay is probably what it comes down to. Thilthorpe, big moments, kicks accurately. McStay presents and competes and is in a lot of those aerial battles, but just he's not what Thilthorpe can do for the Collingwood Football Club. So, questioned about whether Fly would entertain returning for a qualifying final, perhaps against the Crows. I think a lot of us as fans would love that opportunity to rectify what we saw last night, and it still seems to be a bit of a stomping ground for us, even though we lost. I feel like we just obviously we dominated the stat sheet. Kind of reminds me of was it Collingwood and Melbourne 2023, the qualifying final, where statistically we shouldn't have won, but we did. I think the stat that's floating around is we had the second biggest inside 50 differential to then lose a game. So that's how big our assertion was on the stat sheet. Clearances were good as well. Fly mentioned, and I think you can thank a certain player like Scott Pennery, because he led from the front and just found ways to get out of the stoppage, hack the ball on the boot if needed. He really got the ball rolling and kept the tempo up all game. Okay, last piece of information from that press conference, which is interesting. And I seen something reported by Seven a couple of days ago, which I happened to miss. Look, it seems like, firstly, Jeremy Howe should be back next week, which is huge. It's going to stabilise the back line furthermore and be reintroduced, standing next to a Billy Frampton and Darcy Moore, who were pretty good. Billy Frampton was outstanding and Darcy Moore was good last night against the Crows. So Jeremy Howe thrown into there will give us more stability than what we've seen in the last 6 weeks. Okay, so there's that, and then there's Bobby Hill getting better every day, but Fly's not too sure whether he'll play next week, and I think Fly's just being conservative there. He doesn't want to jump the gun too early on whether Bobby will be available next week or not, and rather just err on the side of caution. Now, it's sounding like it sounds like, from what I've heard, he's out for personal reasons. That's why he didn't play this week. I thought, and I've heard now with that press conference and a report, I think it was yesterday, so it's only recent, that he was out for personal reasons again. Whereas, like I said, I thought it was gastro, it was conditioning. So long, guys, just so we're very clear here, so long as it is personal reasons, I'm probably just going to take a step back now. Because we've had our word. We all know where we stand with all this, firstly. Two, we cannot assume for sure what is happening, okay? So we've had conversation, and I think if you want to have this conversation, we can reserve it off the camera, but I think for now, we just can't speculate anymore. He's out for personal reasons again. I thought, okay, he's back for Brisbane, cool. He's out against Hawthorn due to gastro, okay. I thought he'd be back this week because he's back in the system. He's back at training. Then we hear he's not playing, but then we all assume it's due to conditioning reasons, which is why I was like, what's happening here? And then now, a day or so later, we find out it's due to personal reasons again. So, yeah, it's tough to pin the tail on a target. So we're just going to leave that for now. We've got bigger fish to fry. Took some really positive steps going into this final series, and hopefully we can continue it against the Melbourne Demons on Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Until next time, go Pies.